Germany is shrinking. Millions of apartments stand vacant and must be torn down because the next generation of tenants is missing. At the same time, all across Europe, the numbers of the elderly are rising. Though there are major differences. In France or Sweden, for example, distinctly more babies are being born. How are those families getting along in these countries? Are the childcare services better? Are the tax allowances for children larger? Is politics able to have any influence at all on whether people want to have children? Over the past 10 years, the city of Halle has lost a third of its population. It's not alone among large cities in eastern Germany. Housing development companies have begun tearing down whole blocks of high-rises in response. By 2010, 20,000 apartments are supposed to be demolished in Halle alone.
What's currently going on there is a huge problem. Around 1,000 to 1,200 apartments vanish in Halle each year. They're torn down. It's been evolving gradually since 2000, but now everyone has formed a united front against this surplus of housing units. They are tearing down this massive supply of vacant inventories. Our properties distinguish themselves by the fact that, unfortunately, all of our housing inventories had already been refurbished with new windows back in the 90s. Which means that they were as good as brand new. In compliance with the new regulations, thermal insulation, we'd already repaired all of the roofs. Sadly, now even properties like that are being surrendered to demolition. Because the tenants just aren't there, that's exactly why.
Wärmeschutz, wir hatten alle Dächer bereits instand gesetzt und leider sind auch jetzt solche Objekte dem Abriss mit preisgegeben.
Weil einfach die Mieter fehlen.
Weil einfach die Mieter fehlen, ganz genau so.
Silberheuer used to be one of the model satellite towns in former East Germany. 10 years ago, 40,000 people still lived here. Today, less than half of that. In the centre of the community, one street of shops. The last shopkeepers have no rosy hopes about the future.
There were so many shops on the street, and now you see what's left. Absolutely nothing. It's all dying out. People used to take walks along here. They went window shopping and then came in the next day. Nowadays there's nothing to attract anyone to this shopping street anymore. Not for a stroll or to look.
The leading cause of shrinkage in eastern Germany is no longer that the people moved away. It's because the number of children is too low. A downward spiral that reinforces itself, because fewer children also means that the parents of tomorrow are missing.
After reunification in 1989, not enough children were produced, so as to speak. So the big kink from that birth rate is going to come in about 2010, 2015. That means at the moment we've got 1,300,000 vacant apartments, and we're going to have another million standing empty in around 2010, 2015. Then things are going to get really tough. At some point, the critical mass for a shopping mall won't exist anymore in this region. At some point, the critical mass to have streetcars running won't exist anymore. That means everything is shrinking. Everything's moving back to the inner city. In 20, 30 years, you can reckon with these towns simply not being there anymore.
The radical changes during reunification unsettled people in former East Germany to such a degree that the number of children sank by almost 70%. The consequence? Most of the child daycare centres had to close. Here, a typical dual-purpose facility, day nursery and kindergarten in one.
21 combined facilities like ours used to exist, before and after reunification. Now, only 4 of these combined facilities still exist. That's how far the number of children has fallen.
Shrinkage has changed the social fabric too.
This area has already become a bit like a poor people's neighbourhood. When it was still East Germany, it used to be that anyone with a brand new apartment was someone special. Now it's become just the opposite. I think everyone here is a little worried that it is going to become the ghetto district, and in a way it already has. In fact, we're actually the only family here in our building. I find that a bit depressing. When you only have 2 tenants left in the whole building, that's not pleasant, but that's the way it is.
Wenn man dann am Ende nur noch 2 Mietparteien wohnen hat, dann ist das nicht angenehm. Das ist einfach so.
The Eric Kastner School in the same district of Halle. The few school children in the vast schoolyard are a marked contrast to 10 years ago, when it was packed during the breaks.
We simply don't have enough kids here. It was around 5 years ago that the number of pupils began to reduce rapidly here in the newly built areas. That brought the question of what's going to happen to the schools. We all had to get used to the idea first. Now we're among the last to be closed. As of 2006, the only thing left in the area with new housing is going to be 1 secondary school. Originally, there were a total of 13 schools, and in the end, 1 is all that's left. In other words, some have been closed for a while. The first of them have already been torn down. We don't know what we're supposed to do here. The area will be grassed over, but that's about it. Maybe they'll plant a few trees, but that's all. There just aren't any development plans here.
The population in the western Ruhr region, where most of the coal mines have shut down, is also shrinking. Not as fast as in the east, but it's been going on for 30 years. Mailman Uwe Flegel from Gelsenkirchen.
It's gotten worse over the years. I've been doing this job for almost 40 years. It's really bad. I deliver mail to around about 1,600 households, and when I see all these apartments, I'd say there's definitely a vacancy in every second or third building. What with everybody moving out? There are hardly any buildings in the neighbourhood where the situation is constant, and I could say it will stay that way. And it's getting worse all the time. What we really need is an urban redevelopment of Germany, because today overcapacity situations of vacant apartments are emerging in both the east and the west. The city of Wuppertal, for example, already has a vacancy rate of over 6%. That's equivalent to East German conditions. We've extrapolated projected figures for several towns in the Ruhr region, going up to 2015. In the city of Gelsenkirchen, for example, we determined that we'll have an excess of 7,000 apartments. In Essen, as many as 20 to 30,000. That will lead to slum manifestations in the affected neighbourhoods. The apartments stand empty, they get boarded up or occupied by squatters, they fall into disrepair. There won't be enough buyers for the shops anymore, they'll close up. That means we'll have no other choice than to demolish housing too. In some towns, the first demolition projects are encountering immediate resistance from both politicians and the general populace. Naturally, we have to get used to the idea first. But if we do things like they did in towns in the new federal states in the east, where they waited so long until they had 10 to 15,000 units standing vacant, then it's going to be very difficult to manage. We really have to start right away, because if we want to tear down housing inventories in 5 years, we have to know which ones they're going to be.
15.000 Wohneinheiten entstanden sind, dann wird es sehr schwierig zu bewältigen. Wir müssen eigentlich sofort anfangen, denn wenn wir in 5 Jahren Wohnungsbestände abreißen wollen, müssen wir heute schon wissen, welche das sein werden.
Coal mines and steel foundries have been closing down in the coal-producing area of northern France too. But in contrast to the Ruhr region, there's no lack of coming generations in this North French crisis zone. It's just the opposite. The hospital's maternity wards are reporting a real baby boom. France's birth rate has been well ahead of Germany's for decades. Here in the north of France, the women are having even more babies than the French national average, exactly 2 babies per woman. But why are the French more fertile? The Hôtel de Ville in Paris, City Hall and administrative seat, and a child daycare centre as well, a very special one. It was set up in the former private residence of Jacques Chirac, a political signal from his successor Bertrand Delanoë, the incumbent mayor of Paris. A good way to score points with voters. Even though France has 3 times the nursery capacity of Germany, finding a spot for your child here in Paris has become a challenge. The reason? In more and more cases, both parents work, and French parents rely on the quality of care and supervision at state-run nurseries.
We both work, and our daughter is well looked after here. She's developing faster than if she were always at home.
It was important to me that she gets together with other children so that she can develop.
She's adapted very well here. She's content, though it was more difficult than it was for the other children. Most of them were already being brought here when they were 5 months old.